You can feel the energy shift in the room. You know, I love that. So, as I mentioned, I thought that I would talk about connection. And we just spent some time connecting within, so I thought we would talk about connecting to life. So what does that mean, to connect with life in a mindful and meaningful way? I thought that I would share 3 ways that I try to practice doing it. And the first way is being open and non-judgmental. So we are often pretty judgmental as human beings, and it keeps us really closed to life, right? We have all of these preconceptions and ideas about things and people, and it really prevents us from experiencing connection a lot of the time. So I thought I would share an example of it in my own life. It was probably about 10 or 15 years ago. I was renting a property and had a leaky faucet. So I called a plumber, and he came over, and he looked and sounded like pretty simple, like blue collar kind of guy. He seemed nice enough, and he came inside, and I led him towards the bathroom, and he stopped at this bookshelf that I had. I had these 2 bookshelves, and one was filled with, all kinds of, spiritual meditation, Dharma kind of teachers. And he stopped at one called I Am That by Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this book, but it is a thick, dense, 600-page book that is not an easy read. So he stopped and he pointed to it and he asked if I'd read it. And I replied by saying that I was about halfway through and I was actually stuck on a part. And so he asked me where I was stuck, and we started engaging in this conversation where he began explaining all of these incredibly complex concepts about consciousness and non-identification from this perspective of Nisargadatta. And I was just blown away. And I'm standing there, listening to him speak with this eloquence. And I couldn't help but be aware of and humbled by my judgments, right? Because why should I have been so shocked that a plumber was familiar with Nisargadatta? It's because I had these judgments. So wisdom can come from all sources, and teachers can be found, and connections can be made, and experiences can be had. Life can change like that if we're open and drop our judgments. So that's the first way I make efforts to practice connecting with life. The second way is by being playful. And as adults, we aren't childlike very often. We're all business, right? We've got our heads down in our inbox and on the phones, and we're checking the clock and, keeping to our schedules, and we're worrying about the next thing, the next responsibility. And most of us have lost connection with that inner child that so easily connects with life and the joy in life. So there's no better way to, break up like all the responsibilities and pressures of grown-uphood than to connect with that inner child, right? And what that means is looking for opportunities in any moment to be playful and childlike. And so I'll share another experience that I had where I got to practice this. It was just last week. And I was walking down the harbour front in Toronto with a friend of mine. So it was a long weekend, there were a lot of people around, and we were headed towards a destination. And I passed a gift shop where there was a glass wall with some shelves, and on the shelves there were these bobbleheads. There were like about 20 of them, and they were really silly looking bobbleheads. Like they had these really big heads and really silly big eyes. And so I stood in front of the glass and I faced my friend, and I just started acting like a bobblehead, moving my head and my arms and acting totally ridiculous, just to make him laugh. And it's not about the bobbleheads, it's about the fact that I just impulsively acted like a kid would, right? I, was totally unself-conscious and not worrying about whether it might slow us down, and not worrying about whether it was going to be a waste of time to act like a bobblehead for 5 minutes. It was just about being in the moment and connecting with exactly what was around me and being playful. And this is what kids do, right? If you are parents, you probably have a lot of opportunities to connect with this part of yourselves. You go into an elevator and you see, as adults, we're like not making eye contact. We've got, our serious expressions on our faces, our brows are furrowed a lot of the time, and the kids are pressing all the buttons and twirling around and, commenting on everything they see and connecting, in this really joyful way. So, again, it's really one of the best things that we can do to, to relieve all the, the pressures and the challenges of adult life, to connect with, the child in us, the playfulness that so easily connects with the most joyful aspects of life. So that's the second thing that I try to do. And the third thing is practicing gratitude. And, gratitude's been this buzzword for a while, right? Everyone's practicing gratitude. It's often oversimplified from my perspective. Gratitude can be really difficult to practice. And it's in part because we live in this culture of lack. So for a period of my life, I was very much caught in lack and had this real me against the world mentality. Nothing was going right. Everything just felt like an uphill battle. And I could not find the simplest things to be grateful for. And that's what happens, right? Like, for me, I was so focused on everything that I wanted that I didn't have. And when we do that, it's pretty much impossible to tap into gratitude, right? It's only when we can appreciate what we have in our lives that we can access it and experience it. So I realized that because it was so difficult for me to even feel grateful for the simplest of things, it was that much more important that I practice it. And so, I started this gratitude practice at night. I would do it every night. And at first it was just me going through the motions. It felt empty. The words felt empty, but I would go through the list. And I just started with whatever was right in front of me, because that's the only place you can start. And it was so hard. It just felt like I was grasping at things, and there was kind of this emptiness, but I would go through the lists. I'm grateful that I live near one of the nicest parks in the city. I'm grateful that both my parents are alive. I'm grateful that I have enough money in my bank account to survive. And I just kept on doing it, and I did my best to really feel into the gratitude and begin really focusing on how valuable those things actually were and what they meant. And slowly, the practice started to change, and the words felt different. I'm grateful that I live in a part of the city near one of the most beautiful parks. I'm grateful that both of my parents are alive. I'm grateful that I have enough money in my bank account to survive. You know, it just changed, and I felt the words in a different way. So gratitude is like this muscle that we need to strengthen, right? Because we've got this negativity bias. Our mind naturally goes towards the negative. So we really have to pull it back to notice the positive. And there's always something to notice. So we could be grateful for our challenges and our discontent, because for many of us, that's what brings us to this practice that's so life-changing and transformational. Now, I know that was the case for me. We could feel grateful for the light, so we're not fumbling around in the dark. We could feel grateful for the fact that we can nourish ourselves with food from all over the world. Avocados from Mexico, and oranges from California, and salmon from British Columbia. And we can have it all. Like, that's amazing. We can be grateful for our senses, that we can see and hear the beauty of the world. And not everyone can. Right now, I'm really grateful that you're all here right now, because this wouldn't have been nearly as much fun without you. So just to wrap this up, those are the three things that I try and practice. Being open and dropping judgments, being playful, and practicing gratitude. And it's not easy. I've been meditating for well over 20 years, and it's a practice. This is why we sit. We're cultivating these qualities that we can bring into the real world. It's practice for real life. So I thought I would just end with an awesome quote by Albert Einstein that resonates really well with this theme. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. So I love that quote.